Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Self-Driven webinar series, Crystal Balling Business Ahead with Consumer Data Insights. I'm Michelle and Iking, and I'm joined today by our special guest speaker, Mr. Vittorio Furlan, who is the Head of Business Insights at ADA. I will hand over the platform to him shortly to introduce himself and his company. But before that, just to give a little bit of a brief as to why this partnership, as to why we felt there were synergies between the topic that Vittorio will be speaking to us about and what we do at SelfDrvn as a business. So SelfDrvn is a digital talent engagement platform, and essentially we use concepts like behavioral analytics, gamification, and digital nudges to create an optimum employee experience so that organizations can really get the best out of their talent, making sure they're upskilling themselves for the future of work, that they are ready in both mindset and skill set to be ready for digital transformation. And while we're also preparing for the future, really making sure that they are operating in an environment where they can be their best, so that they can be the most productive versions of themselves. And ultimately then becoming self-driven as opposed to boss-driven, which is our ultimate aim. And really in understanding, this, we know that we have to understand. In order to be understood, we must first seek to understand, that's what we're in the business of, understanding our employees, because only when employees feel understood do they feel empowered to give the best possible customer experience, and that of course leads to better business outcomes overall. And so we have a shared, I think, a mutual interest in making sure that we understand our consumers. For us, it would be our employees, the employees that an organization that chooses to bring self-driven into the fold. We seek to better understand the employees so that the business can leverage and motivate them better to get the business outcomes that they want. And of course, Vittorio here is here to share with us some of the wonderful insights that ADA as a digital marketing agency has been able to obtain about consumers across Southeast Asia during COVID especially. And with that data, sort of do a little bit of forecasting what we might expect about how consumers will behave post the crisis, which will not end not anytime soon. And so it's in everybody's interest, I think, in this session to understand as far ahead as we can what might happen so that you can tailor your businesses accordingly. We've got a participant here, Furlan, who works in rewards for HR and would really want to understand how we can use behavioral data and gamification to engage our talent. So absolutely, and we can connect with you separately. We want to tell you that. We want to make sure that we deliver what was promised on the tin, and making sure that we do share with you all those consumer data insights that Vittorio and his ADA have painstakingly put together for us. So without any further ado, Vittorio, please welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Please introduce yourself and the company, and share with us the insights you've gained researching the consumer data that you have access to.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle, and good afternoon, everybody. I see that we've got people from a few parts of the world, which is quite exciting. So we're going to spread well beyond Southeast Asia for the day. Thanks for coming. That's excellent. Yes, Michelle. And yes, absolutely. Today we want to talk about consumers. And try to understand a little bit more about what happened during COVID and what we expect to happen after. And we are very happy to be guests of SelfDrvn because in a way we shared exactly the same intent about understanding better about people. SelfDrvn focuses more on the employee side of life. We focus more on the consumer side of life, As anybody understands, the employee and the consumer really go hand in hand. And so today we're going to also look at some aspects of work that COVID and post-COVID has introduced.
Very exciting stuff. Great.
And it's also restating what Michelle said. If you do have questions, we are very happy to get them. Use the chat. I will try to pick some of them as we go through, and also we will have some time in the end. But please do ask questions. We want to make this one as relevant as possible for you. So let me get started with pre-COVID. I'm just gonna go back to February this year. So this one was the last conference that we did before all the lockdowns started. It was the time, if you remember, the end of February. It was the third week of February, where we actually didn't know exactly what was happening.
So much uncertainty.
Exactly, plenty of uncertainty. The week before the conference, we were in the Philippines. Everybody was starting getting extremely concerned about COVID. In all buildings, they were testing the temperature, and we looked at what people were uploading and consuming on YouTube. And already mid-February in the Philippines, there was a spike of COVID-related videos. The Philippines were really concerned. And so we were about to board the plane to go in Bangkok, Thailand, where this conference is. And really, we didn't know whether the conference would have happened or not. So we called the organizers, and they said, of course, do come. Everything is happening business as usual in Bangkok. And so we arrived, and as you can see, we found this room, which was completely jam-packed.
Jam-packed.
We did the same analysis that we did in the Philippines about the consumption of videos, and in Bangkok, Thailand, people were actually not worried about COVID. For them, it was just business as usual. But as we know, a few weeks later, a couple of weeks later, everything changed across Southeast Asia. So let me just introduce ADA. Let me tell you where we come from in terms of what you're going to see today. So we are the largest outcome-based digital marketing and data consultancy in South and Southeast Asia. We started our origin as a marketing agency, so helping clients and brands to communicate with their customers. And as we did that, we started building a very strong knowledge about the consumers in South and Southeast Asia. So that when we talk with them and when we decide how to communicate, we actually do it based on data, not just based on gut.
Sentiment and gut, yes.
Exactly. We operate in nine countries, South and Southeast Asia. And as much as we can, we try to be outcome-based. So we are not just interested in a way selling our services, doing nice, say, visual or ads. We are actually interested in driving outcome for the companies that work with us. And
I
so
think that's very important, obviously, Vittorio, in this time and age where businesses are really struggling to stay afloat, and they can't afford just the nice to haves. They can't afford hiring services for the sake of hiring them, but really it's got to be outcome driven, and very quickly you should be able to see those outcomes, right?
Exactly. Executives want to be able to link what they do to a result, be it top line or bottom line, and that's really our specialization. And to Lepeng, who asks about how they can integrate data, I will touch a little bit in the talk today, and I will be more than happy to continue to talk at the end of the webinar and answer more specifically your question. So just going back 1 second on the consumers. So in South and Southeast Asia, we have approximately 400 million consumer records that we monitor. We basically capture data through a variety of sources. The mobile phone is one of those. And really, we want to create a picture of the consumer that sits behind the mobile device. Now we do it in an anonymous way, so we do not know that this one is the phone of Vittorio. We are not interested in that. We're interested in being able to communicate through Facebook and social media to Vittorio.
So just to be clear, what I'm getting from that, Vittorio, is that you're not spying per se. I won't be able to identify. Nobody's going to be knowing that exactly what I spend and linking it to Michelle. Bought too many bags again, or whatever the case may be, right?
Exactly. We will not know that it's Michelle. We are not interested in knowing that it's Michelle, but we are interested that somebody in Kuala Lumpur on aggregated level is spending money on bags, for example.
Okay.
There are a couple of exceptions to this. For example, credit scoring. But in that case, we get explicit consent from the consumer to use their data.
Sure.
Generally speaking, it's always anonymous.
Thank you.
And just as a short intro to myself, I've been in digital data and analytics consulting for most of my life. I'm really passionate about looking at information and how it can be actually used by organizations to improve the life of consumers and citizens. And as you can guess, I'm not a native of Kuala Lumpur, where we are live today. I'm an Italian native, but I also spent a large chunk of my life in the UK, Australia, of which I'm a citizen, and now for 3 years in KL, where I look after the 9 markets of ADA.
Very cosmopolitan there. So unfortunately not able to travel to any of those places in the near future.
No, exactly. It seems to be that the borders are going to stay closed or stay kind of closed for a little bit longer.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but fingers crossed, 2021 will bring some good news.
Absolutely.
So if we go back to that conference in February, 3rd week of February, that was the last time that we went abroad. 2 weeks later, for the Malaysians, the movement control order was enacted, basically with forcing everybody at home. Other countries followed in the same way. And what happened is that companies and the brands did not know exactly what to do. They went in the dark, and something very, very odd happened. I'm going to show you what happened. This happened. You may remember in the middle of March, we started receiving emails from companies and brands that we had interacted over the years before. I personally did not even know that I was a customer of Santander in the UK, but apparently I am. And they were sending us emails to telling us what they were doing to handle the COVID-19 situation. You may remember that we probably received even 50, 60, 70 emails middle of March by all these companies telling us, hey, customers, I'm looking after you. I know that you're worried about COVID. Don't you worry, we are taking lots of actions to make life better. And that's really a sign of organizations not knowing what to do, not knowing exactly how to communicate and what to say. And so what they decided to do was to fall back in a very safe and sensible way by saying, I acknowledge that there is a big problem, there is a big safety problem. I'm going to tell you that I'm looking after you. And that's a very, very standard and very safe way to handle such situation. But we are,
yeah, I'm very curious to hear, that sounds like a pretty sensible option, to reach out proactively to your consumers and say, we're going to look after you. But it sounds like, Vittorio, that's not the best thing with hindsight that could have been done. Is that what you're saying?
it's probably a sensible choice as first response, but it really shows that the organizations at the time did not know what to do.
Okay.
They more or less just treated every customers as if they were exactly the same, by assuming that Vittorio was very concerned about COVID, that Michelle was very concerned about COVID, and that everybody else was very concerned about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Without really digging any deeper in trying to figure out actually that maybe Michelle was different than Vittorio at the time, and therefore the communication should have been different.
Mm.
And in fact, at that time, what happened at the start of the lockdowns, just at very high level, there were three types of people in the world. There were the people that were classified as essential workers, doctors, medics, people in the delivery, civil infrastructure. They more or less kept working as they used to do. They used to go out, to go to the hospital, go on the motorbike for delivery. There was a second group that started working from home. We more or less switched from this office to home, and our life continued. And then there was a third group that actually lost their jobs. They simply could not work anymore. They were in a much worse condition than anybody else.
And so this would be sort of the hospitality industry, the restaurants and bars.
Exactly, and if you think also many workers in the construction industry, and especially in countries like Malaysia, there are lots of foreigners that were in a way repatriated at the time, so they lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so our job as ADA and as outcome-driven marketing agency, we really wanted to go way deeper than that. And be able to tell our clients exactly what was happening with their customers. And so that is what we're gonna see shortly. You remember that after the emails, we switched to this phase, which was the webinar phase, which of course is not finished yet because we are still here today. But everybody was organizing webinars. We were basically replacing conferences and meetings with webinars online. We used to get even 1,000 of people in our webinars at the beginning, and we started understanding that actually the consumers were responding in a variety of ways. And so we at ADA, what we did, we started looking into the data that we capture. And to tell you more, we capture data about the movement of the phone. So for example, today we know that Vittorio's phone is in the ADA office in KL Central. We also capture information about the apps that get used. So for example, we know that Vittorio this morning went to the gym and he did a Tabata training. And later on, he checked the delivery of his parcel and so on. And so by looking at the data, we discovered that there were 9 personas that emerged out of the COVID lockdowns. And when we talk about personas, we talk about a series of behaviors, a series of emotions, a series of communication preferences that go well beyond the simple age or gender of the person. So the traditional way of segmenting people, it's superseded by personas that really embody way more social characteristics than just what is linked to age and gender.
Wonderful, really interesting. So I'm sure you're going to take us through at least a few of these, if not all.
Absolutely. I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about all of them. The important thing is that just before COVID, these personas did not really exist, or if they existed, they were marginal in size, or really not important from a consumer communication point of view. But what
Okay.
happened? Yeah, that's the big change. What happened as the lockdown started is that they emerged in size, and almost the vast majority of the population could be characterized by one or multiple personas. And they become extremely relevant in the way that brands and companies had to communicate to their workers. And to some extent, even employers had to know how to communicate to their employees because the reaction was significantly different.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to touch on a couple of them. One is the working from home professional. These are the people that were in a way very lucky because they kept their jobs. All of a sudden, they switched from a nice office. They went to a home office. For some people, slightly better equipped than others. But what did not change was the working hours. They were still very busy. Many of you, I'm sure, on the call recall in a way, the longer evenings spent on the laptops. Sometimes there was no real boundary between private life and work, or way less.
Yes, it did seem like when you save money on the save time, I mean, on the commute, you tend to start earlier and end perhaps later than you might originally have done if you still had to do the commute, interestingly enough.
Exactly. Many people really switch the commute time for additional work time. And this came with a price. Many people were actually very stressed by the situation, let alone people that were working and also had kids at home with the schools closed. The amount of stress and commitment just went through the roof. At the same time, these people did not lose their salaries. So they still had money to spend throughout the lockdowns or MCO in Malaysia.
So Vittorio, I'm very, just if I might ask you, because I mean, obviously I was one, I fall into that bucket, and I know intuitively, I experienced that stress you speak of, but I'm curious to understand how you, what data did you observe that indicated the stress actually increased?
So the way that we look at it, we use predominantly two ways to identify what is happening. In this case, one way was the use of specific apps that are related to home office or in general work life.
Okay.
Some apps such as Office, Microsoft Office type of tools or scanning solutions just went exponentially through the roof. People were basically trying to print, scan, sign documents, edit documents, also using their phones. Normally they were using office equipment to do that, or they were not expecting, for example, to sign any digital document, and all of a sudden they had to switch to this type of solutions. And so we saw a drastic increase of those type of apps on the phones. And then we also performed some primary research, basically asking and investigating on how people felt during the time, and the stress element for many, not for all, but for many, was quite significant. Now, if you think as a brand, if you think as a company, telling these people that you're doing something about COVID for them. Yes, it may be important, but it's actually not their main concern. When you're there, you still have KPIs to meet. You are in the safety of your own home. The COVID risk is not perceived as to be
Very
so high,
right?
but your deadlines are still there. The children screaming at the back with homework to submit, and you are trying to figure out what to do. And so really the communication in that case needs to be focused on how you help with the efficiency, how to help with staying healthy and productive. And these are prime people, for example, to target for improvement of the house to make it more work friendly. Or also, if you identify that they have children, to help them deal with the additional workload of having to become, in a way, teachers, if you will. Again,
right.
way more valuable than just assuming that this person is just worried about COVID. No, this person may be worried about COVID, but they've got another big worry, which is continuing their life as workers, as employee from home.
And I think it's not too late then, if I'm understanding it correctly, Vittorio, it's actually not too late. And actually this insight is more valuable now, because perhaps at the beginning of a lot of the lockdowns, even were you to be a service provider that could help, set up a home office, a sophisticated home studio, you wouldn't be allowed into people's homes, but certainly now you can. And so if I'm trying to do my amateur home studio setup myself, but certainly if there was a provider or even a rentable, home studio setup just for when I needed to do webinars or a particularly important meeting, I think that's a viable business proposition. And then to your point again, the childcare or teaching, again, another opportunity to leverage on this consumer insight to really, think of new revenue streams. Wonderful.
Yeah, and you're really preempting what we're going to do next, which is really to understand which people have switched completely to going back to the office and which ones are still in between. Because again, the needs of these three groups, the ones that just stay at home, the ones that they use both offices, and the ones that go to the office are quite different. And of course, yes, having, say, teleconferencing tools that allow you to have a better experience are becoming quite important and prevalent in a big chunk of the workforce.
Absolutely. Great. What else have you got for us, Vittorio?
So the second group that I'm gonna touch on is actually the people that lost their jobs, unfortunately. We call them the bored homebody. It's really people that were not in a lucky situation, I would say, to be able to continue to carry out their jobs during lockdown. And especially as a society, it's of course a big concern for all of us. Because of in a way, the time and the months that have been lost by these people, and by the need also being financially supported. But in other ways, what another big concern is from a psychological point of view, from a emotive wellness point of view. Because finding yourselves locked at home, if you have your job to carry out, if you got children to look after, you may be stressed, but at least you got a very strong purpose. If you found yourself that you were locked and they actually did not have a job, was way more challenging than the previous, the other group. And so when again we look at the behavior of these people, how did we identify them? Well, because there was a significant increased consumption of entertainment apps. People were basically spending all of a sudden way more time on their phone, playing in a way silly entertainment apps just to fill the time throughout the day. At several points during the day, so suggesting that actually there was not an activity carried out. Also, these people were not traveling outside their homes, so they were not, say, essential workers that were just relaxing when they were at home. They basically spent the entire day at home and a big chunk of the day trying to fill the time.
Mm.
And you can imagine how that can be stressful. And so when you are a brand or an organization and you're talking with them, they're not necessarily really worried about COVID again because they're at home, they're well protected. But they are worried about what is going to happen to their lives, whether they're going to go back to employment at the end of the lockdowns. They want to find ways to spend time, potentially in a light-hearted way, or they may also be interested in reskilling and upskilling themselves during that time. And so the communication will be less on efficiency. People will also have a lesser spending power than the working from home group, because most likely they've lost their jobs or they're on some unemployment benefits. And so again, what we wanted at the time is for brands to move away from just saying everybody's worried about COVID, everybody's the same, to really understand that something different was being experienced by people depending on actually where they ended up to.
And so I'm curious, Vittorio, if I'm now a business owner and I have something of value to offer to this community, perhaps an upskilling program that is very affordable, would there be a possibility to particularly target, based on the data that you have, particularly target this segment specifically for affordable upskilling for the digital age, demographics?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Because we still identify them. So in a way, despite the end of the lockdowns or the CMCO in Malaysia, there are still people that have not returned to the workforce at full capacity. And so those ones in a way can well be targeted for activities like upskilling. They would be most of them would be interested in gaining new skills that can be spent on the job market. And that's why when I say that what we do as advertising agency and you as HR provider really goes hand in hand, because the life of a consumer is tied to the life of the employee and the worker. And it's important to consider a person in the complexity of different aspects of their lives.
Absolutely.
So absolutely, this one would be a prime target for upskilling programs.
A prime opportunity. I'd rephrase it as a prime opportunity to help someone in the right space, because I think they're already, I think, fairly vulnerable in their state, and I think what we need to caution against is usage of data primarily to and when we use the word target, I always get the sense that they become victims of like these evil marketers who just want to get their money. They already lost their jobs and you're trying to get their money, but there are many ways that I think people can solve their problems, help them upskill for the new age, and many of those are a very minimal investment, and it's really about adding value and helping them get to a better space, for the future.
Exactly. And I know that the word targeting is often perceived with a negative feeling, but yeah, in this case, it's not really, and in many cases, it's not really negative. It's really being able to communicate the right message to the right person, and in this case, it's of course with a positive intent to help people at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to touch on these two personas. There are a few more that were identified. Just some anecdotal experience. Many of you will remember on Instagram, everybody became a chef all of a sudden. There were all the recipes that were printed. Again, not everybody, but many people did. A large chunk of people became started working out and training from home, what we call the home fitness freak, with lots of online workouts, and again posting everything on Instagram. But again, it's important to use different lenses to look at what happens to people, and try not just to rely on assuming that everybody is impacted in the same way, or the way that we respond just depends on our gender and our age. There is a way more complexity.
So I know, Vittorio, that these personas, all of them are actually available for in-depth review on the ADA website. So it's made publicly available. So for those more interested, you can absolutely go there. I'm very curious, if we have time, if you think we have time, I think some of them are pretty intuitive. Home fitness, health nut, even the social citizen. I kind of get a gist of the group people who are really active in social causes, and they continue that work from lockdown. But I'm really curious to understand, for example, what's the difference between the homebody who's just lost their job and is perhaps a little bit vulnerable, versus the sad and confused, versus the resilient one? If you wouldn't mind just kind of highlighting some of the key insights about these groups.
Yeah, there were we noticed some differences in the type of apps and the consumption pattern. The bold homebody had time available, but by and large they seem to be okay with that.
Okay.
By and large. The sad and confused was having a more prominent use of apps for self-help, monitoring how you feel, or also irregular patterns of use. So showing signs of distress. So not necessarily not in a job. The person could have been busy and potentially could have also been part of the working from home professional, but also seeking additional help through self-help apps. Right. And again, a single person does not need to belong to one single personas. Sure. You can exhibit and belong to multiple personas. And so again, when you look at for example, the resilient one, they were showing signs of being more disciplined, more on track and on top of things. And again, there are some nuances depending on the type of apps and the pattern of consumption.
So what were they on? They were on productivity apps.
They were still on productivity apps. They were showing, for example, that they were starting their day early. Right. Not, for example, let's say sleeping in the morning. And again, they're all signs about how the person is responding to the stressful situation.
Interesting.
And so, for example, just to disclose, I was belonging to the working from home professional, very stressed, but I also became a home fitness freak.
Yeah, because you believe healthy mind, healthy body, right, Vittorio?
Exactly. And so when you look at, if you were to look at my record, the record of my phone, not the record of Vittorio on ADA, I would have been flagged in both of them.
And so for example, I mean, it's again quite intuitive. Fitness freak, if you had a more attractive yoga mat, maybe there'd be a prime audience for you, for example. But for the resilient one, given that they are, there's distinctions between them and the work from home, what might a marketer or a brand, what would they do with the information about the resilient one, for example?
Well, the resilient one, again, is somebody that we would not necessarily recommend to focus on helping, as in calming the person about what is happening with COVID. They probably managed already to find the comfort and to understand and assess the risks that they were facing, and also understanding how to adapt to the new situation that they were living. So just by not sending the message to say, again, I'm worried for you, that would have been a good start. But also the resilient did want to continue life as, in a way, to some degree of normality. You may remember that there were some restaurants and places, high-end restaurants, that around April for Malaysia started delivering high-end food at home.
Right.
Like say steaks, for example, or gourmet food. And that is really a response for the people that were at home, were still having an income, and they were feeling comfortable, that they still wanted to continue their lives.
Enjoying their lives, yes.
Because, birthdays still continue, anniversaries still continue. And so if you think about the resilient one, they would have been the ones that actually continued all these activities, despite being at home and despite being in a COVID situation.
Wonderful. So I can see some similarities now, and it does involve a little bit of brain work, but that is, the analysis and data does involve that little bit of massaging and how do you call projecting or thinking ahead how to interpret. So in response to Hui Wen's question about how we use behavioral data for employees, for example, similar to what you've done with these personas, Vittorio, because we are also a talent reward, we do rewards. People can get employee points for when they do specific behaviors like fulfill goals, give feedback, complete certain learning quests, etc. And one of the things that you can observe is if people stop engaging, as in they stop commenting on their peers' posts, they're no longer taking as many learning challenges as they used to. One very clear indicator, if they cash out their employee points, which you can use them to redeem Lazada vouchers, gift vouchers, etc. If they cash them out, then you as the business owner or HR person or their manager better watch out, because that's a clear indication behaviorally that they are ready to check out, right? They're cashing out their points just as you would cash out your points for credit cards just before you're going to switch over to another card or cancel your card, right? So very interesting that's what you've done. What I'm understanding, that's what you've done with these personas, really projecting what is the interpretation that these people are resilient, but they still have money, they can afford a good steak. And if you are a provider of a good steak, then here's your target market, right? Really, really fascinating stuff.
Exactly, and I really like the fact that again we are putting together the behavior of the employees with all those small signals that may be sent, like cashing out points, and the behavior of people in general. Because often it's through these small changes in behavior that you can understand how people are responding to situations.
Absolutely. Really interesting. Wonderful. And obviously if anyone has any particular questions about any one of these personas, please feel free to indicate in the chat if you want to find out a little bit more. I don't know, Vittorio, if you have time to continue on this one, or you'd like to move on and share some of the other insights that I know you've got up your sleeve.
Yeah, I'll probably move on, but I did want to ask people to ask for questions. I realized that Michelle and I really like talking about this, and we are already 45 minutes after the start. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and we're gonna try to answer them.
Wonderful.
So I'm gonna fast forward now to what the new normal is. So after the conference in Bangkok and after the tons of webinars, this was last week. It was actually my first event, public event after the lockdowns in Malaysia. As you can see, it's a very large meeting room. There are only 5 people per table. There's plenty of space. This one looks to be the new normal in many ways. It's quite a good new normal if we can actually socialize with people and at the same time, you know, reduce the overall risk. But what we did, again, we are data geeks at the same time. We like to look at how people behaved after the lockdowns, and so I'm going to show you a couple of charts. Now that people start going out again and going to places again, as you can guess, the way to read this chart. Level 1 is what people used to do before the lockdowns. When you see the chart going up to 2, it means that twice as many people or twice as many times people have been going to, in this case, healthcare and pharmacies. And so, as you can expect, as soon as people could go out again, they started going out to pharmacies way more than what they used to do. They've not really suffered during the lockdowns because people still needed to get drugs. When you look at QSR's restaurants, so the likes of McDonald's and the likes, there was a big dip during lockdowns. People were using home delivery during the time. And after the end, people enjoyed even more than before getting a quick bite.
Absolutely, sure.
Looking at shopping malls, we have seen a slight increase as soon as the lockdowns, the CMCO in Malaysia started. People went back, and then just a small increase afterwards. And in fact, we would say that more or less now the use of shopping malls is the same as it was before the lockdowns. And this one, again, it's information. This one is specifically related to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So other parts of the world, such as the Philippines in Manila, are still in lockdown. We understand that Jakarta is about to enact a lockdown from tomorrow. And so we expect that we are actually entering a new phase of kind of confusion because the different countries, especially in Southeast Asia, are about to respond in a different way to the way that the situation evolves.
Because these would be the second waves, is my understanding, is what we're indicating, right?
Yeah, the so-called second waves, really. That depending on the country, the governments and the public opinion are responding in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So just to show you another couple of charts. Airports are, as you can guess, are not doing very well. Some of the numbers that you see here are actually people that work at the airport. The airport are still operational in terms of having maintenance staff. And the e-commerce, this is the interesting one. Well, we've been very, very busy during the lockdowns, ordering lots and lots and lots. This is what actually happened. It went drastically up as the lockdown started.
I probably contributed to a few of those peaks.
I'm sure. And judging by the amount of empty boxes outside the house, it's still going quite strong, but slowly returning back to what it was before the lockdowns.
So anything, I mean, these I think these are fairly intuitive, right? Like, you know, restaurants are closed. When malls were shut, you know, nobody went. When they reopened, people rushed there. E-commerce, lots of online shopping because of the malls being closed. Was there anything, Vittorio, that you found surprising that was maybe counterintuitive that you want to talk about briefly before we make sure we have time to address you know, those misconceptions you mentioned that we have about millennials and mothers, and making sure that we address that topic as well before we run out of time?
Yeah, look, there are probably, I would say that the return to the shopping mall in reality is something that we were surprised. We did think, we did forecast that the shopping mall would have stayed empty or empty-ish for the rest of the year. We were wrong, actually. Happily wrong, because now when you go to a mall, actually, besides the having to wear a mask and in certain places to scan, it's again full of people. Our forecast was very different. What we are trying to understand is about the time and the number of stores that people are visiting. Our assumption that we have not tested yet is that people are spending less time in the mall and are visiting less shops. We are about to test this assumption in the coming weeks. We don't know yet where that is.
If I hazard a guess, the one reason why less shops are being visited is because it's such a pain to register and scan. So I personally, as a consumer, I'll give you one insight for how I shop now. I will crane my neck and sort of just peer at the outside of the store and see if there's anything worth going in for, because signing in and scanning the QR codes to, you know, and have your temperature taken for every store is just not worth it. So it's probably good for my husband and my wallet that this has happened, but that's certainly why I'm not going into as many stores even when the shopping malls are open. So I don't know, again, a business opportunity for anyone who can allow us to quickly scan inside a shop before we step in, because it will save a consumer's time.
Exactly. If there were ways to do that, I'm sure that many people would like it. And our next piece of research will be exactly to understand how people are responding inside the mall, whether they've changed the way even that they walk in the mall, to test whether that is true. It feels true as a shopping mall user. We want now to test it with data.
Sure, please. And perhaps we'll move on, Vittorio, to the millennials and mothers.
I actually realized that we've got four minutes left. So I'm gonna again ask you for questions if you have any, and I'm gonna touch briefly just on the mothers, really, because besides COVID, when we think about mothers, we tend to think about this. We tend to think about a youngish type of woman with a relatively young or newborn child. We think about them as staying at home mothers. Maybe they used to work before, but they are not working anymore. And we also think that probably they spend lots of time in shopping malls or cafes. Now, you may think this is a shallow way to look at a particular persona and a particular group, but the reality is that brands and marketeers and the companies often fall for this, and they often think about mothers just in this way. Mothers are, of course, an important group from a marketing point of view, but also they are an important group as employees because of their particular transition from a work life to a temporary life without work. And so what we do, we try to add additional lenses to it, which unfortunately in the 2 minutes that I have left, I will not be able to tell you too much, but really we challenge every time that we look at something and it looks simple, we challenge companies, we challenge brands, and we try to look at them with all the nuances that actually that word as mother can have. And the reality is that the vast majority of the mothers are actually still working.
Mm-hmm.
There are some of them that are at home. There are some of them that work in offices. Some of them that do jobs that are more difficult. And thinking about them as just going to say a shopping mall after they've dropped off the children to school, it's a very overly simplified way to talk and consider them. And so what I would have shown you, which I will not show you, but I'm definitely happy to talk about that offline, is how we look at and how we split mothers in the multiple subgroups that they have, and really how from a communication point of view, that really changes the way that we should communicate. And if I can touch also on, from a working point of view, mothers represent a very important group of people in terms of hiring and in terms of reintegrating in the workforce, because they're often very well trained professionals that left the workforce, and they are ready to return. And understanding and being able to tap into them as employers, it will be the trick that will help us to acquire important skills without just having to rely on the usual groups of people.
And this is particularly resonant for us because, again, we've recently embarked on an exercise with something we call SelfDrvn Campus, where we actually managed to hire women coming back from a career break, and gave them the skills to learn a new, skill for the future. And in this particular instance, a digital marketing, skills for a working mom. A career comebacker who had left the workforce some time ago, several years ago, and had struggled to become relevant in a new age. So this is certainly something that is very, very resonant with us. Could you, as part of maybe some parting and ending insight sharing, Vittorio, isolate one of these hexagons and illustrate for us what might be a pertinent messaging for the mother that is in that particular image?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to probably touch on two aspects. One aspect is how the different behaviors in terms of phone users that we see. And what we notice, if you look at the three groups, we basically split. There is a big difference between expecting mothers, so pregnant women that have not had a child yet, mothers with young children, pre-primary school, in this case 0 to 6 years, and post-primary school. When you look at the behavior in terms of places visited and types of apps used, there is a very strong demarcation. So already we can split the initial picture of just having mothers with toddlers or newborns. We can already create this more complex picture, and especially with expecting mothers. Because they're just before a massive life stage change, and they are, in terms of their interests and needs, a very particular group. And then we take this one further, and I realize that the slide is not there, so I will not show you that slide. But the communication then changes with these groups, because somebody is again at home with the child, or somebody that is working with the child, either in childcare or being looked after by the grandparents, has very different needs.
I'm specifically really interested, Vittorio, if you could help me do this interpretation. So I'm looking at the mothers with kids 0 to 6 seem to, you know, they're sort of like, I'm giving up. I'm not even going to try to be personally productive. You know, it's sort of like, if I can say it, stuff it. There's too much hard work. I'm just going to listen to music. I'm just going to go on my Facebook and play games, because like, forget personal productivity. You know, I'll get back into it when I have the energy and the mental strength to deal, because my toddlers are driving me crazy. Was that an interpretation?
It is a very valid interpretation that suggests that the mother at that stage is still with the child. They've not returned to work yet.
Right.
So if I were to split that one into those who don't work and those who work, there's a difference. And I also wanted to touch on the games, that the games is not necessarily that the mother is actually playing with them, but it may be that they're actually used to entertain the child.
The children, of course, right.
And so again, that profile suggests that the mother is with the child, has not done the transition yet. And so again, going back to tapping into people with a career, doing a career break, those are the ones that are yet to re-enter the workforce, and soon, in a few months or in a few years, they will be ready to go back.
Absolutely. So listen, Vittorio, I know obviously we've hit the hour, and obviously some people listening in may have to go, but in case anyone is sufficiently interested, and ideally if you have a few more minutes, could you share something about the millennials that you found most surprising? Because we did promise folks that we'd touch on that. So if you're able to share 1 or 2 insights, I think that would be useful, and whoever wants to stay can stay.
Absolutely. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on the millennials as well. Now, why do we talk about millennials? We talk about millennials because every time you talk to a brand, they want the millennials. That's one of the first bit of conversation. Partially because you know, they are a new large group. Partially because they're not really understood, and the problem is that the millennials, the reality is that their age now ranges between 20 and 40 by just applying the definition. So when you think about the millennials as a group of young people without commitment, still very happy-go-lucky. Actually, they're not like that. The vast majority of them already has kids. And again, we are talking about, in this case, a Southeast Asian context. If we were to do the same in Western countries like Australia or Italy, the picture would be most likely different. But the reality is that already between 20 and 29, there is nearly half of them with children, which is quite important to remember when we think about the millennials sitting on the sofa and playing games. That's actually not the right way to look at them.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Yes, because we forget that, because the millennial definition is born between a certain year, right? And obviously I forget the definition, but they grow up, and yet the usage of the terminology millennials is always default to the youngest. And that's why we think they're those irresponsible, you know, little bratty. Sorry, I don't think you're like that. It's not my opinion. It's sort of, you know, the general misconception. But you're quite right that when to be accurately using the words millennials, they've grown up. and are adulting now, right?
Exactly. They are grown-ups. Most of them work. And I've discovered that also, actually, also my boss is a millennial. He belongs to this group, has children, very mature person. But when we do talk with many brands, the idea is still about the youngster, worry-free person that just wants to buy a two-seater car.
Mm. And so interesting, what I'm interpreting from that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Vittorio, is firstly, if I am in this age group and I identify as a millennial, so in my mind, my identity is a millennial because I fall into the right age bracket, I would be very resentful of any brand that insinuates or continues to insist that I am irresponsible, demanding, etc., when I am in fact a fully functioning adult now. So I would resent any brand that indicated I was not an adult. And I think as well, similarly, a brand, if they are misconceiving who millennials are, in their minds, they might be thinking, I want that teenager punk-ish. And so when they tell an agency like you, give me the millennials, they're going to be selling their latest gaming console to a father, a 35-year-old who maybe, is not, well, let's be honest, a 35-year-old father is probably always going to be interested in a gaming console. So this is not the best example, but you know what I'm saying, right? So there's definitely a disconnect between what marketers are thinking they're getting and how indeed they may be impressing upon that specific target audience who do no longer identify as being the young, carefree, no responsibilities demographic. Very interesting.
Exactly. And so, if there is one takeaway from this hour that we spent together, is that don't stop looking at the first level when we talk about people or when we give labels, but really look at the nuances and the reality behind what we see in the first place. And when it comes to being able to communicate, both in terms of what we say, how we say, what type of message of channel we use, it really changes depending on the specific personas that we talk to. And we are very passionate in understanding these different behaviors and personas typically from a consumer and advertising point of view. But this also resonates very well as employers when we look at the workforce and when we look at what they are interested in.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we felt it was such a great synergy to partner with your team, Vittorio, at ADA, because you've hit the nail on the head. Employee engagement, what one might dismiss us as merely being employee engagement, and what a lot of folks misunderstand, there's a misconception as well. Employee engagement is just about the rah-rah activities, bring your folks bowling, send them to movie night and things like that. Quite apart from our existence in a world where that is no longer physically possible. Employee engagement, employee experiences is well beyond that. It's really looking at data that comes from observing the interactions that talent have on our digital platform and using that data to make decisions about how better they can create a more conducive environment for those employees to perform at their best, so they can better serve the consumers that you are studying, and help give businesses that need to stay profitable and productive and relevant in today's world, offering the best products and services they can. So really a lot of synergies between our brands, and I've personally found a lot of useful insights from this session. Really thank you very much, Vittorio, to you and your team for spending time with us. And for the folks who've been joining us, thank you for your questions. We will be making this webinar available as a replay, and we'll be providing details of how you can get in touch with Vittorio's team at ADA in case you are smart and progressive enough to want to be able to leverage on their expertise in culling these consumer data insights that will be relevant to your business. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Vittorio.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you very much, everybody.
Wonderful. Take care, everyone. Good afternoon. Bye.